Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into how creators evoke completely genuine emotion and realism across writing, level design, and lighting. Look, if you've ever found yourself totally absorbed in a digital landscape or just deeply moved by a completely fictional scenario, well, you've experienced the exact magic we're going to decode right now. So, let's start with the ultimate question. Why do we connect so deeply with artificial and digital creations? Seriously, why do simple pixels and text have the power to make our hearts race or literally bring tears to our eyes? Well, it turns out the answer lies in a super careful orchestration of human psychology, visual cues, and a whole lot of deliberate restraint. To understand how all this works, we're peeling back the layers today. We're going to cover the psychology of storytelling, crafting authentic emotions, sculpting realistic 3D environments, and finally, the cinematic lighting formula. All right, Section 1, the psychology of storytelling and how we engage the mind's eye. Let's look at the absolute foundation of how our brains process a narrative. Now, psychologists make this really fascinating distinction when it comes to how we relate to characters. There's actually a massive difference between simply knowing how a character feels, which is called cognitive empathy, and actually experiencing their emotional state right alongside them. That is affective empathy. And as creators, our goal is to push the audience to actually feel it. We don't just want them to understand the emotion, we want them to live it. And the main way we achieve that affective empathy is through something called emotional contagion. Basically, animators and writers use these really subtle cues to prime us, allowing this contagion to spread tension or joy or excitement directly through the screen. Just think about it, how a quavering voice, a hesitant step, or even a sudden crescendo in the music instantly transfers a character's anxiety right into your own chest. It's wild. And this goes incredibly deep. Take the baby schema, for example. Evolutionary biology is literally being hijacked by character designers here to create an instant bond with you. By giving a character large, rounded eyes and soft facial contours, designers are tapping directly into our hardwired nurturing responses. We are biologically programmed to feel instant empathy for these specific physical traits. No wonder it works so well. Moving on to Section 2, crafting authentic emotions, or writing with restraint. Let's see how professional book editor Jesse Hoffman applies these exact psychological rules to script writing and dialogue. To trigger that affective empathy we were just talking about, Hoffman highlights one golden rule: less is absolutely more. Think about it. Real people rarely state exactly how they're feeling, right? They use subtext. So when a writer gives full-throttle self-expression to a character, it just feels fake. The secret is holding back. You gotta let the subtext breathe and rigorously trim down any overly demonstrative dialogue during your revisions. Which brings us to the core theme of this entire explainer. Jesse says it cheapens human emotion to underscore it with a dark red crayon. I just love that analogy. When an amateur writer tries way too hard to make sure we know a character is angry or sad, they bust out the thesaurus and use every adverb imaginable. It causes an instant eye roll because it feels like manipulation, not genuine emotion. In fact, we're going to apply this red crayon metaphor to every single discipline we cover today, because it perfectly explains why amateur work feels phony and professional work feels authentic. Sappy, on-the-nose dialogue? Red crayon. But as we'll see in a minute, leaving your digital landscapes perfectly smooth is also a red crayon. Slapping a default directional light on a 3D scene? Massive red crayon. Let's step out of the script and into the physical world for Section 3, sculpting realistic 3D environments and how level designers avoid their own version of that red crayon. So say you're in Unreal Engine 5. You start with a basic landscape, maybe 100 by 100. An amateur might sculpt these perfectly smooth round hills, and boom, there's our red crayon. But a pro? They're going to use procedural tools to sculpt chaotic, natural erosion right into those hillsides, making the terrain feel weathered and authentic. Then you paint in your overgrown paths, maybe add some subtle puddles, and populate the trees. Oh, and a quick technical tip here. Always set your foliage cull distance, usually to around 7,000, to ensure your dense forest doesn't completely crash your system. Now, building on that eroded landscape, we need some atmosphere. In a tool like DeFi Render, setting a moody vibe is all about tweaking parameters. You start by importing an overcast HDRI for that realistic global lighting. Then you introduce fog, playing with the density and height. But here's the crucial step. The real magic is the water mist. Setting that mist density to 0.9 creates this heavy, realistic, wet atmosphere that practically makes you feel cold just looking at it. Throw in some directional winds so the rain isn't just falling straight down, and suddenly you've got a living, breathing environment. Finally, let's zoom out for section 4, the cinematic lighting formula, where we explore how to illuminate these incredible digital worlds. There's a pretty stark difference between default setups and professional rendering. A default Maya directional light leaves shadows looking super flat and totally hides the details. Classic amateur red crayon vibe. But swapping to an Arnold physical sky, it casts these beautiful, natural, long shadows that instantly expose your bump maps, revealing all the gritty, tactile textures on the ground and the rocky details of your environment. But what actually makes lighting feel cinematic? Well, 3D artist Gleb Alexandrov makes a great point here. Cinematic beauty fundamentally equals an easy read of the image. It means you're giving the viewer's eye a structured, immediately understandable view of the space. You need a clear separation of 2D shapes alongside a really strong illusion of three-dimensionality. Basically, you have to guide the viewer's eye effortlessly. And Gleb has a magic formula for achieving that easy read, and it's all about aggressive control. First, you use light blockers or negs to kill the light spilling from the front and above, forcing those surfaces into shadow. Then you let a soft reverse key light, or upstage lighting, do the heavy lifting from behind. Layer in some aerial perspective with fog for depth, and finally, play around with a high dynamic range format like EXR to push that gorgeous contrast between cold shadows and warm highlights. Putting this into practice does require a bit of technical balancing, though. Once you replace that default lighting with an Arnold physical sky node, you usually need to crank the sky intensity way up, maybe to 10 or even 20 depending on the scene. But because that introduces visual noise, you've got to bump up your camera samples, say to 2 or 3 to compensate. It's the classic 3D art trade-off. Nailing that upstage lighting and fog means longer render times, but man, that cinematic realism is worth every single second. As we bring all these disciplines together, Jesse Hoffman's advice for writers actually serves as our master thesis for everything we've covered today. Handle the heart lightly. Trot out the violins, and readers will laugh and groan, not feel the sublime emotion you were intending. Whether you're placing a light blocker to plunge a scene into shadow, eroding a 3D hill so it's not mathematically perfect, or writing a breakup scene full of subtext, subtlety is absolutely your greatest tool. Putting away the red crayon allows the audience's own affective empathy to step up and fill in the gaps, creating a bond that is just incredibly powerful. So I want to leave you with a thought to carry into your own creative work. How will you use shadows, subtext, and fog in your next project to make your audience feel rather than just see? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I honestly can't wait